Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got a great interview today.
Oh,
yeah, we are talking with Gary Brown of Stone Mountain Press, who is getting to release the new hockey game, Stone Cold Hockey. And we played that the other night. We played, actually, all weekend we've been playing that game. We did a stream the other night as well on YouTube. And we got him on the show, and we're going to talk a lot about his new hockey game, as well as some of the other games he developed, too.
He's come up with Legends of Boxing and Dice United and Grid Zone, which I had forgotten. I didn't mention it when we talked with him. But I actually played that when it first came out, when it was a freebie.
Yep. So we're going to be talking to him on episode 148. Holy cow, 148 episodes of Digital to Dice. Yeah. And ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com. That is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is our email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, and we have a couple new Patreon supporters, we want to thank you so much for that. Patreon.com/digitaltodice. Without further ado, let's get to our interview. Joining us on the Dice Line, he is the creator of Legends of Boxing, Grid Zone, Dice United, and the brand new Stone Cold Hockey. Please welcome to the show, Gary Brown.
Pow! Good to be here. Good to be here with you guys.
Nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And Ron's a big fan of the Legends of Boxing game, the Tommy Tomato Can, the whole bit.
Tommy Tomato Can, which I need to do a third part, but yeah, Tommy, the struggling heavyweight boxer from Rutland, Vermont, trying to get out of the mean streets of Rutland, Vermont, and onto the international stage. But
fantastic! But, yeah. I need to catch up on your videos, Ron.
So he has a good time with that. All right, now before we get going, there is one question that we ask all of our guests, and that question is: if you could go back in time and attend any sporting event at all, even one you've already been to, what would that event be?
Wow. I bet you get a lot of overlap on this question. I don't know how many people have answered this. Let me tell you about a few things that came to mind, because I was anticipating this, having listened to the podcast. So, I'm a big boxing guy, right? So Hagler Hearns, I would love to have seen, 8 Minutes of Mayhem. Thrilla in Manila, I'd get my money's worth there, 14 rounds. Going further back in time, I'd love to see, Sugar Ray Robinson fight live, in person, right? Zale Graziano, what a war. Those are some of the boxing things that come to mind. I did not choose one of those, however. My very first hockey awareness was Lake Placid, 1980. Miracle on Ice, right? Gosh, yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing to be there for that? Could you imagine the feeling in that building?
And just the people there really didn't have any idea how big it was. I mean, it was big, but it was bigger than anybody there thought it was. I don't even know if it's sold out. That's what it was. It was
no kidding. Wow.
It was like, hey, that's great. We're playing hockey. We beat the Russians, whatever. But it was so much bigger than anybody anticipated.
This was global. I was not a hockey fan at the time. I didn't even really understand what I was watching, in terms of the sport itself. But I think I did have an inkling that this was an analog of the Cold War.
Yeah.
That's how big it was to me, right? And so... it gave me this huge, jingoistic, pride that event did, and knowing what I know now, having served in the Marine Corps, as the Soviet Union fell apart, and all that stuff, I would love to go back and experience that event. So that's way up on the list. I'm also going to preface this by saying, you could ask me this question again a month from now, and I might give you a different answer. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So something else that came to mind is I was listening to Steve Tower on with you a couple months ago, and he said Game 6 of 1975 World Series, and so I just thought, myself being a Cincinnati Reds fan back in the day, I would just go with Game 7 instead.
I would think you would. I would think you would.
I think my dad was at that game.
Jim and
Wow,
Willoughby.
really?
Yeah.
Jim and Willoughby are two words that are not allowed to still be in the same sentence, and it's been 40 some odd years, here in New England.
Oh,
That was a great series.
yeah.
So you got
that
some
was-
good
that
ones
was
there.
something.
You got some good ones there for sure. That's some good stuff.
To get back to the Miracle on Ice, God's honest truth. At the time, the Olympic Committee allowed pretty much anyone with a credential to broadcast stuff live. And so the only place in the United States that you could hear that game live was on a station in Saranac Lake, New York. He drove to Lake Placid. It's not that far of a drive, plugged in his board, and did that game live. They would not move the game until 8 o'clock for ABC's purposes, and the network would not let them show that game live at 5.
Yeah.
So if you were within the 5-mile radius of that little pea shooter station in Saranac Lake, New York, you could listen to that game live. And that was it.
Yeah, it was on the radio only. Yep, it wasn't even on TV live. You had to wait till that night, but by then the word would get out,
Right.
But, yeah. Imagine that one of the biggest
That's
events
remarkable.
in hockey history wasn't even on TV live.
And it was, it wasn't even Dan Kelly or Al Michaels that called it live. It was just some guy that, probably the next night did a high school basketball game between Saranac and Plattsburgh for crying out loud.
Wow, that's remarkable. Yeah, there's so many stories surrounding that. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you more about it, but I guess we should move on, huh?
No, that's fine. But I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So the event that I actually settled on for now,
Oh, okay.
October 7th, 1931, and one reason is because that is way beyond, way before my lifetime.
You got me. I don't know where you're going with this.
That is Game 5 of the World Series between the St. Louis Cardinals and the Philadelphia A's.
Okay.
And this has more of a personal family connection because the hero of that World Series was a up-and-coming player by the name of Pepper Martin.
Okay.
And I married into Pepper Martin's family later in life.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
And so, and I've been a Cardinals fan, pretty much since I lived in Central Illinois in high school. And so, I just think it would be really awesome to experience to be at a World Series, which I've never been to one, and to see somebody with whom I have a personal connection, right?
Yeah.
On the field.
Yeah.
Being the hero. And so Game 5, I mean, he was the hero of that whole series, right? He
Right.
really, he terrorized the A's, especially his base running. Pete Rose credited Pepper Martin as a major influence on what his style of play, running, diving head first, stealing bases and stuff like that. Pepper Martin was a major influence on Rose later on.
Wow.
But yeah, I just think it's fascinating. So in that particular game, I know Pepper, I think he had 3 hits, 4 or 5 RBIs. I think 4 RBIs out of the 5 runs scored. They won 5-1, and the game lasted 1 hour and 56 minutes.
Oh.
We've never failed to ask the question where we weren't surprised by the answer.
Yeah, we've had some very unique answers. We really
We've
have.
had game designers before, horse racing games and that, and so you expect to hear, 73 Belmont or what have you, and it's completely the 180%, of what I think is coming, and so that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. It's a nice little connection there. I will say one thing about Game 6 of the 75 series, because of course I'm here in Boston, and as fun as it would be to go to Game 6, 1975, and see that game play out with Fisk and the whole bit, I would only do it if I didn't know who won Game 7. Because going there and trying to enjoy Game 6 in all its glory, knowing they were going to lose the next game and lose the series would sour me. It's like, yeah, that's great, we won, but you know something, we're going to lose Game 7. So I would have to go back and not know who won Game 7. Then I could really enjoy that game.
The discussions like this, really, as a game designer, it makes me think about the whole idea of momentum.
Yes.
In sports, right? It's like sometimes you see a Game 6 or a Game 5 or whatever won in such a dramatic fashion that you just know that the next game is set in stone because of what happened, right?
Yeah, right.
You can't overcome that tidal wave.
Look, don't bring up 86, okay? I know all about that.
So on one hand, you have this iconic moment with Game 6 and 75,
right?
And well, they didn't win the series. And then you take something like the 2010 series with the Rangers and the Cardinals, and there's this disastrous moment in was Game 5. I think it's Game 6. There was this disastrous moment for the Rangers in Game 6, and I was in Dallas at the time, and we went into Game 7 just knowing that we were screwed, right? And it turned out that was the case, even though early in Game 7, the Rangers scored a couple runs early and had a lead, and it's like, but no. So I don't know. It's an interesting. We love to talk about momentum and theorize about it, but sometimes I wonder if it really exists, right? The way we think it does.
The players will say no, but the fans will say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Uncle Mo has any jersey ready that you need.
Right.
And it can switch at a moment's notice.
Yeah. All right. So Gary, what got you into playing games? What were some of the first games that you played? And I'm talking like the cards and dice stuff here that we got going on.
Okay, so I can't count the Game of Life and Payday and the Parker Brothers.
I suppose you could if you wanted to.
Monopoly and all that, because that's where it started for me.
Okay.
I mean, as when I was a kid, we used to have big game days.
Oh yes.
Especially in the holidays, it'd be time to drag out all the games and play them all. Well, I was pretty young, and I came up with the idea of why don't we do it like a tournament? And so we started keeping track of who won the most games. We'd play from sun up to sundown, and at the end of the day, whoever had won the most games was our Game-a-thon champion of the year. And this is a tradition we still do today sometimes.
Oh, nice.
When we can get everybody together. And so that got me into it. And then I quickly, probably middle school or so, I was getting kind of bored with those games. And so I started kind of tinkering around, designing my own. So I would take, actually, I was even younger than that. I took the Game of Life with the little cars and the track and the spinner, and I made a racing game out of it. And I actually assigned numbers to the cars, and I would spin the dial and add modifiers. And
it does kind of look like Formula D, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah. So that was probably my first game design tinkering that I did. And then from there, I don't know, Avalon Hill came along. I started getting into more heady simulationist, exploration and war games, adventure games. And then that led to RPGs, and I just went nuts with RPGs from about 1979 to through the 90s.
Did you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I remember the first time finding the 20-sided die was like, that was unbelievable. 1982 or something like that. I was like, 20-sided die, this is awesome. Double damage.
Yeah, I mean, my game designs have these polyhedral dice in them for a reason. It's just where I came from, And my first product was Search and Destroy, which is an RPG supplement that I did in 2015-ish, somewhere in there. So I Stone Mountain Press started there. Stone Mountain Press takes its name from that product, in fact. But sports games is where I've been able to find a little bit of a market. So that's just the way it's gone. RPGs. From RPGs, I probably did that up until early 90s. And I didn't really discover sports games until then. And the main reason was because I couldn't find people to play RPGs with anymore. I mean, it's like these people are married and they got kids and jobs and stuff.
Right.
And so I started looking for something else. So I found Stratomatic Baseball, the common gateway drug.
Yes, it is.
And then shortly after that, and I wrote about this extensively in the Sports Sim magazine a couple years ago, issue number 1. I ran across Title Bout, and that blew my mind. I loved Title Bout. And I played those two games like crazy for a number of years, and that's where I got the sports gaming bug.
Have you heard Al, Red Sox fan, who is our boxing guru in the community, talk about the story of how he drove wherever he bought his games nuts until they got him a copy of Title Bout? He'd heard about it or read about it. I mean, he would go in. He must have been a young teenager, 13, 14 years old. Have you got it? No. Have you got it? No. Have you got? Yeah, exactly. And that's
just pounding them.
That's right. Here, shut up, leave us alone, never come back. You know.
That's funny.
So I got to ask, because we're going to talk a little bit about the boxing game. Did you ever talk with Jim Trunzo about game design or anything like that?
No,
okay.
not directly. He and I ended up corresponding sometime after Legends of Boxing was released as a commercial product.
Right.
So probably about 3 or 4 years ago, we exchanged some emails, and yeah, that was a real good interaction with him.
Good.
He bought a copy.
Nice.
Yeah, he bought a copy of Legends and was checking it out, and so yeah, we ended up getting into a conversation back and forth a little bit about the nuances of his design and my design and so forth.
And so what made you come up with, because when we talk about Stone Cold Hockey, I see a lot of Legends of Boxing influence into that, and I'm sure a lot of from Dice United as well. What caused, or what made you decide to want to go into kind of a highlight package type of gaming? Although Legends of Boxing really is a full fight sim, but you know, it's in chunks in it. So what made you want to go in that direction?
Well, I would say that Legends of Boxing is also a highlight-oriented game. It's basically giving you highlights in 20-second.
Right. Nine per right.
Right. So, yeah, it's not giving you every punch, you know, like more, you know, kind of like Title Bout does.
Right.
So I don't know. I think the thing that runs the through line with all my designs is narrative. And so I want the game to tell me a story, and I really don't like, I should say I want to try to avoid minutia in the game design, to where, you know, you make 2 or 3 dice rolls and you eventually get to the point where it's like, nothing really significant happens, and you move on to the next increment, time slot, whatever. I don't like that. I try to make as many to make your dice rolls efficient. I want the game to count, and for when you come to an event in the game, I want it to mean something in the context of the story that the game is giving you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I saw a lot of that when I played the boxing game. And when Dave and I have been doing the testing for Stone Cold Hockey, I see a lot of that as well. That there's nothing in there that's wasted. And if you don't pass check number 1, there's check number 2, and if that doesn't pass, then you go to result number 3. And so it's all very, fluid would be the word I would use, even though that's probably the wrong one. But it all means something.
Yeah, I mean, even the boxing game, I'm not. You know, I'm very critical of myself anyway. You know, to me, there's still a little bit of dead weight there, but it's very little. You know, things like if you get a split action result and you're in the, you know, you go to one of the columns there and it says the fighter's juke and move. Okay, right. Well, that's what happens for that 20-second segment, and so nothing really happened, right? That's a result where nothing really happened. But at the same time, if you step back and you look at the whole round, you can look at this ebb and flow and go, man, there was a big exchange here, and then they juked and moved here, and then, you know, here, bam, somebody got through with a hook for a 3-point, you know, stunner. Right. And you know, so it still gives you a little ebb and flow to the narrative, even though it is that example by itself is a result that seems to contradict what I'm saying.
No, yeah. And so what made you want to design a hockey game?
Well, hockey has been climbing up my interest ladder of late. Baseball and football have fallen way down in terms of sports that I follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really enjoyed hockey the past few years. The pandemic, obviously is not great for any sport. But prior to the pandemic, the Blues won the Cup. I thought that was really fun to watch. And so that kind of got me back into it. The Stars during the bubble, the Dallas Stars had a good run there. And it was that series, in fact, that I was watching and taking some notes. And I noticed that Tampa Bay pretty much won that series in my mind because of how they were just able to wear the Stars down. The Stars just physically couldn't keep up with them by the end of that series. And so that started planting that seed. And then in the meantime, during these years of these events I'm talking about, Dice United's already out there, and I've got Dice United customers saying, hey, this would make a really good hockey game. Okay, yeah, I think it would someday. We'll see. And, well, someday finally arrived. And so, fast forward to last year, about 14 months ago, I was putting my house up for sale, and I was taking a breather, and I thought, what can I do to finally get on the Digital to Dice podcast?
You could have just emailed us. We would have put you on.
And I sat back and I thought, you know what? By golly, I'm going to have to just design a hockey game. There's just really no other way I'm going to achieve this.
Dave, your influence in the community.
I
was
not expecting that. That was great. That really was. I'm off guard on that one. That was great. Yeah. At last season's playoffs in hockey, round one had to be the best round one ever of playoffs.
Game sevens.
So many game sevens and ups, and it really was. People walked away from that saying, "Wow, that was such a good first round playoffs." It really was. So yeah, now's a good time to get on.
2022,
the one that we just played. Yeah,
2022.
Yeah,
man, the playoffs were fantastic. The Blues Avs series was just it gives me chills just thinking about some of the stuff that happened in that
Calgary Edmonton series. When I turned it on, and it was like 6-1 Calgary in the first period, and they lost. It just Edmonton scored one, then they scored two, and then Calgary scored again. Okay, we're done now. Really, no. Then Edmonton scored two more. Then okay, they're really done this, and they came back and went to overtime, and then Calgary kicked the puck in, and they disallowed the goal. There was so many memorable moments during the playoffs last year. Yeah, that was a good hockey run.
That was jaw dropping. Yeah, absolutely. Good example.
The Rangers going into the conference finals literally on house money. I mean,
yeah, that's cool too.
Yeah, they had a good run there. Okay, so you decided to do
good luck recreating that in a replay.
Oh, geez, right, yeah. All right, so you decided to do a hockey game just for the sole purpose of coming on the show. Okay, I get it.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so you decide that the Dice United soccer, that would be kind of the one of the better routes to kind of take this game, because soccer and hockey are kind of similar, right? So you decided to go that route. And then what kind of differences were you running into, trying to create a hockey game versus a soccer game?
Lord have mercy. Where to begin? The timing.
Okay.
Is a huge thing. I played with all kinds of timing mechanisms before I finally just sat back and went, you know what? Just a regular old D6 will get this done. And that was central. I mean, that was a core piece that I had to get figured out, because in soccer, it gets, that game produces somewhere between, say, 14, 16 highlights per game. And I kind of wanted to do the same thing in hockey. And you guys are going to laugh at me, but I thought, I kind of had the hockey game partially designed going into January. And in my hubris, I thought, hey, you know what? All you really need to do is just take the soccer game and adjust the scoring a little bit, just pump it up where there's more scoring, and bang, relabel a few things, and we'll have us a hockey game. And I thought I would have this thing pretty much done in a couple months.
Wrong answer.
No, not even close.
The Marty Brodeur New Jersey Devils are long gone.
Yeah, so I don't know. The penalties and all the variety of scenarios. I mean, in soccer, it's simple, right? You get a yellow card, but nothing really changes. And then you get a red card, and then you're screwed, basically.
Right.
And
good luck winning if you're down a man
for the rest of the game. And it's nice and simple. And I started getting into hockey. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to handle, 5-on-4, 5-on-3, 4-on-4, and 3-on-3, and empty net, and 2-man advantage, and very soon. Oh my gosh, yeah, it got complicated.
Had you played any other hockey games before you started to design it?
My only other hockey game I've ever played is Hockey Blast.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about how the mechanics of this game and how it works. So if you haven't played Dice United Soccer, so what you do is you roll the 1d6, and that's how many minutes come off the clock, 1 to 6, right?
Right.
And then you roll a 20-sided die. Now, there's a little bit of setup where you determine there's a thing called the puck battle. So, and that's a 20-sided die roll. So you do a couple of quick it's a setup. So you figure out the control rating for each team on the 20-sided die. So 1 to 9, 10 to 20, 1 to 7, 8 to 20. You follow along with that. So the better teams get a better chance of getting control. And then you look at the aggression, and that determines the puck battle number. And that's somewhere between 11 and 15. The higher the aggression, the lower the puck battle number. That means you're going to have more head-to-head battles for the puck with the aggressive teams. So a little bit of setup. You get your control numbers and your puck battle number. So you roll your timing die. You roll a 20-sided die. That first 20-sided die determines whether you're going to check for control or whether you're going to go to a puck battle. From there, you roll either 2 20s or 2 10s to determine who gets the control of the puck and what chart they read off of, or if you're going to have a puck battle. And then you just follow the charts from there. And it's that simple. So if you go to the puck battle, you go to the puck battle chart, you roll your 0 to 100. And what I really like about the puck battle chart, and I have it right here, right in front of me, is that you have it set up for first, second, third, and overtime periods. And there's a little bit of difference in the numbers there. And I do like that it's not going to be the same chart for all 3 periods in overtime. That there is a little bit of play in there on the puck battle chart. So I do like how that goes. And you just follow along what it says, and that's what happens in that segment. And sometimes it turns into a penalty. Sometimes it's a shot. Sometimes you check another table and you just roll another die. But the flow and following these charts is so easy. And even if you roll and you get a control battle, you roll one 20-sided die to see which team gets control, and then the second die you compare to the defense of the other team to see if you're going to get column A, which is your best chance at a goal, or column D, which is your worst chance at a goal. And again, if you've played Hockey Blast, if you go to column A and the criteria is not met, you slide to column B. And if the criteria is not met, you slide to column C. And by the end of column C, you determine what's going to happen on that sequence. Everything comes off these charts and explains in detail what happens. And what I really like here is I'm looking, so if I roll a 34 on column A, and attack 8 scores. So I look at my team. If they're attack 8 or better, we score a goal. If not, then I got to slide down to column B where it says attack 6 or 7, something happens. And if they're not that, then I go down to column C where it's like now we check for 4 or 5, and if they're not that, then they missed a chance. So I really do like how you kind of go from A to B to C, and then you resolve the play on that dice roll. What also comes into play in this game that is fantastic is you have your control numbers, you have your attack, your defense, your aggression, your power play, your penalty kill, your goalie ratings. They can all change during the game. Something can happen during the game, whether it's an injury or something to do with stamina or something else can happen during the game. Fights
can change
are a
those,
big
too.
part of this, where you can lose or gain a control number, or lose or gain attack or defense or goalie. And there's been time, Ron and I played a lot of games over the weekend, and there was a time that one of the teams lost an attack number, and that cost them a goal. They would have scored if they were attack 9, but they were attack 8 because they had lost one of the attack during the game. And then when we followed the sequence down, they took instead of an automatic goal, they took the shot and they didn't score on the play. And I think we both paused at that second, said, that's fantastic how in the middle of the game these things can go up or down. You can gain stamina, you can lose stamina. And it's all pretty much spelled out right in the charts and in the directions. It really flows and moves really nice.
Gaining stamina after a fight, I think, is ingenious because you could get the sense of both teams being pumped up after the altercation. Yep. And I don't see that in any other game with it. I just think,
very cool.
Yeah, you can feel the momentum and you can feel the fans when that happens. And there's a couple of roles in the game that we hit in. We were first playing Buffalo, Philadelphia, 1974-75, and they were two really good teams. And we were just kind of getting the same results over and over and over. And then you sent us the SEALs and the Scouts. So we had two great teams in 74 and two bad teams. And we played like a little tournament one night where everybody played everybody. And we saw the gamut that this game can run of good teams versus bad teams and all the different results that we got. And there was a couple in there that I really like. It's like the losing team makes a play out of desperation and gets a scoring chance. That was great. It really was. Or the team with the least amount of penalties gets a penalty makeup call. And it's like you could just feel the hockey game coming out of this in the charts. It was really, really neat. The things that you put in, the things that, usually I'll play a game and it's like, oh, I got all these ideas for this game. And then I talked to Ron the other day, Ron, I don't have any ideas for this game.
Yeah,
I just don't. I go, he's covered pretty much everything I would cover in here. A couple of little things that, I suggested to him or whatever, or you suggested to him, Ron. But for the most part, boy, we're playing this game and it's just, everything's just kind of happening in a hockey sense. We will be quite honest, though. The first game we played, and I got the score sheet right here. Oh. The first game we played, Buffalo, Philadelphia, the very first game we played, it was like, okay, 4 minutes off the clock, and it was a Buffalo hit. Okay. 4 minutes off the clock, Philadelphia hit. Okay. Then we had a penalty with nobody scored, and then we had another hit, and the period ended. And we looked at each other and just like, okay, did you have any fun? No, I didn't either. It's like, what are we going to do with this game? It's like, all right, we got to keep going. It's got to get better. And we get into the second period, and then we got a penalty on DuPont. And that led to a power play, and Buffalo scores. Okay, we got a goal. And then there was something else that happened, and Buffalo scored again. And then DuPont got another penalty, and Buffalo scored again. And then Philadelphia came back, and then Parent made a save. And then in the third period, a slot chance was stopped and kept the Flyers off from tying the game. And then we went into the empty net sequence where we had a couple of huge saves by the Sabres, and they ended up hanging on 4-2. And by the end of the game, it's like, holy cow. After that first period, we were ready to give up, and we continued on, and the rest of the game, it was so fun. And then every game after that was fun. But we got off to a rocky start in that first period. We did.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
But it's just the roll of the dice. I mean, we could have had an awesome first period or a bad first period. That's just how dice rolls go.
Was it the Flyers?
Well, maybe the game was intent on breaking you in easy. You kind of wanted, give you the feel for the dice mechanics before we start throwing all kinds of power plays and fights and stuff.
We ended up playing, I think we might have played 10 or 12 games over the weekend. And when we played the bottom teams, we started to really get, like I say, get good rolls and bad rolls. We started to see more what the game could do.
Was it the Flyers and the Seals? Was that the one where Philly just boom?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 6-1 game to be on the scoreboard, but you could just see where those mid-70s Flyer teams just wore.
Yeah, the Seals got down to, they went from 10 stamina down to 1, and they just got blown out 6-1, and it felt like a 70s hockey game. It really did. Right. And then we had another game that we did. Was it Buffalo at Kansas City, Ron, right? And this game went into the third period scoreless, with each team just grinding each other down. And the Sabres finally got a third period goal to win it 1-0. And we got done. We were exhausted. It felt like we played the game. It was a grind.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
It really was.
See, and that's a good variety of results too, right? I mean, you might get a game. You might get a game where it's 6-5, with the last goal coming in the final seconds, and then you turn around and you get a 1-0 game. So it's nice to have those possibilities out there. What I'm really encouraged to hear from your summary there, Dave. I mean, you've played millions of miles of hockey more than I have, and watched it, and I've been a lifelong fan of it, and so forth. And I'm a casual fan, and I've got a lot to learn, really.
But you nailed at least the 74-75 Flyer. I mean, it felt like we're playing that because and
on a broader scale, what I hear is that you guys agree with me basically that some of the nuances of the game in terms of how the ratings are affected and when, and the effects of fights, the effects of stamina that you're tracking during the course of the game, that those effects feel like hockey.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what's so important to me. I totally want to capture that and have that narrative come to the forefront when you're experiencing this game.
It did, yeah. And the idea that when you read off the puck battle chart and you check the aggression, the team that wins the aggression throws a hit, so it brings the stamina down of the team that receives the hit, but the aggressive team also takes a penalty. So they level the guy, and it's 2 minutes in the box, but they're bringing down the stamina. And sometimes that stamina comes into play quite a bit during the game. And other times, I think there's a couple games we never really check for stamina, depending. Yeah. Again, the dice rolls determine what happens. And sometimes it's like, okay, if the team's stamina is greater than the other team's stamina, they get a shot from the crease. If not, then nothing. So stamina comes into play a lot more than you would think, because the first couple of games, what's a stamina thing? Do we even need to keep track of that? And then we said, oh yes, this is a huge part of the game at times,
Yeah,
but
and you can have games results in this using Stone Cold in which stamina will not be a big issue, and instead it'll backfire on you because you might go out there and get all physical trying to rough the other guys up, and your penalty kill doesn't do its job, and you end up getting blown out by 5 goals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because of it, and at the end of the game, you look, it's like, well, we had a huge stamina advantage. Well, it didn't matter because you didn't take care of business on the penalty kill.
Right.
So that can happen also, but more times than not, particularly, I think the stamina mechanic really matters in a close game, because that's where you're getting down to the wire. You're in the third period, and then something happens where you have a chance that could have been a crease chance, but because your stamina is lower than the other guys, you end up with a point chance instead, and your chances of getting that goal are less.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might be denied a chance.
Yep.
Sometimes you might allow a chance. The defense, if the stamina of the defense is low, the defense could allow a better chance than they would have otherwise.
Yeah, so, I'm looking right here that, off of chart A stamina 6, you get a crease chance, which is your best shot. If not, then stamina 4 or 5, you go to the slot. If not, if you're stamina 3 or less, then it goes all the way back to the point, which is not a really good chance to score at all. So, yeah, stamina comes to play quite a bit in this game. It really does. I also like some of the things in here, too. We hit this a couple times, too, Ron, where we rolled, and it was a comeback surge. If the attacking team is trailing, they score. If it's tied, they get a slot chance. But if the team is in the lead in the third period, then you roll you max out the next timing roll, like they've really kind of ground down the team and they're killing it. It's called Protect the Lead, it was called. And we hit that a couple times. Oh, there's like 8 minutes to go in the game. We got that, so we're going to subtract 6, the maximum, and they're protecting the lead. They've really kind of gone into that shell of a defense there, that lockdown. And so there's so many little things like that in the game that we stumbled on after playing a lot of games. Like, wow, he's really kind of hitting all the notes here as far as, making making this a hockey game. It really is. And what I like, too, is that fights, power plays, open nets, it's just reading off a chart. And so, again, we go to the power play. You'd factor this, and what I like too about the power play and the empty net is you have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 columns on the power play and 5 on the empty net. So what you're doing is you're looking at the power play, the rating against the PK rating. And there's a couple times, again, when you got the Seals. I'm looking at the Seals card right here. So the Seals power play is a 3. And when they played the Flyers, their PK is an 8. So they were -5. So we are reading at the absolute worst column on the power play possible. And that still allows for goals. But when I played last night, I played Scouts and Sabres. Because the Scouts were so bad and the Sabres were so good, it allowed a shorthanded goal by the Sabres. So I got my first shorthanded goal last night by Rene Robert, I think it was.
Nice. Good.
And I texted Ron about 1:30. I did.
See that? I woke up at 6:30. Like, oh, message. Okay.
Yeah. I work late on Tuesday nights, and so I snuck in a game before I went to bed. And I got a shorthanded goal, so I sent him a message. Ron, I got a shorthanded goal tonight in Stone Cold. So the power plays are all laid out really nice. The empty nets are laid out really nice. Everything's either a 20-sided die roll or 2 10s to get your 0 to 99 roll, and you just go to the column and see what it says, and everything. It's so simple, and I hate to use that word because that doesn't sound fair, but it's such a simple game to play and follow along. And it probably took us, I think after our first game we got into the groove, and then by game
Sunday night we played 6 games in 2 hours.
Oh yeah, we were flying through these games.
That's great.
Yeah.
Simple's not the word I'd use. I'd use the word efficient.
Okay.
There's nothing wasted with that. There are some games by some major companies that you roll and nothing happens, and you get to roll again. And there wasn't any of that.
Yeah. And the one thing, Ron, you pointed out to me too.
One of my.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of my core principles for pretty much any of my game designs. Is I want them to be as efficient as possible. I want to keep the playing time, down. I've got a video. I don't know if you guys have seen it already, but I play a game of Stone Cold in 10 minutes.
Oh wow!
I can see where you would do that.
It's an uncut video. I just started it. I did the setup, and
I can see how you could do that. Yeah, you do have the option of finding out who scores the goals and who gets the assists, who gets the penalties, and who gets in the fight. You do have the options for that. But again, if you wanted us to play a quick play game and just get a final score and not roll for any of the players, then you could kind of fly through this game, I would think, pretty quick. One thing, Ron,
my assumption is that a lot of people will use Stone Cold, as a background game. So
you said that in the newsletter, yeah.
They'll look at their project that they're working on, and maybe they're using Stratomatic as their main game, or Soccer Blast or whatever. And they'll like, hey, the game of the week this week, Hockey Night in Canada is going to be bang, this game. This is going to be our feature. And then the rest of the games we'll just roll with Stone Cold.
The Maple Leafs and who?
See, I look at this and I don't look at this as a game that I would use as something to supplement scores, because I have so much fun playing this game that this is not. I love my Apple Hockey. I do. It's an hour and a half game. Okay, not gonna lie. But I'm not always in the mood for an hour and a half game. I like my Hockey Bones. That's another hour and a half game. Okay, I got a ton of hockey games I play. I play a ton of hockey. I just love my hockey games. I would not slot this game in to be one of those. Okay, this is just going to be a filler. This is more than a filler. You get a good bite of the apple when you play this game if you want hockey. There's a couple games I play that are quick play games that I can roll in a minute or two and get the final scores. This is one that I enjoy playing. I don't mind playing this in 15, 20 minutes or a half hour, because you feel like you've played the whole game in here. And one thing Ron brought up that I didn't pick up on, and it was Sunday night. And he's like, Dave, we just did 2 hours. We played 6 games. You're still dealing with a concussion. And not once did you get stuck in this game? Did you get tripped up in this game? Did you get frustrated? And that's, again, not having a clear head. And let's just say I still got ringing in my ears going on. And he goes, you got through 6 games and we just blew through them. And we're still relatively new to this. Again, we've only had the game a few days. That when you emailed it to us, and he goes, you didn't get stuck, you didn't get frustrated, you didn't get mad, you didn't want to quit, you didn't get a headache from overthinking this thing, and you just enjoyed this game immensely. And I said, you know something? You're exactly right. Is that we just played this and enjoyed it, and sometimes you play a new game and you get frustrated. What am I? Like you said, you got to what do I do? I got to stop, read the directions. I maybe once I got stuck on something that I just did a double take on, but for the most part, by game 4 or 5, everything was just flowing so easily, and we could just enjoy it.
Fantastic. That makes me feel really good, as a designer, because that is the goal. The whole idea, really, with this game, Dice United, luckily came before this and was a template.
Talk about Dice United for a few minutes, because it's not one that we played, so we don't have any experience with it. So talk about Dice United.
Okay, I'll get there in just a second, but the whole point is to, even Legends of Boxing as well, but the whole point is to try to take something immensely complex and distill it down, abstract it in a way where it still gives you that visceral sort of feeling.
It works.
Playing it, and without overcomplicating it. I heard one. It may have been Keith Avalon one time. He and I were talking game design, as we have for 20 years. And one time he said, it's really a lot easier to design a very complex game than it is to design a very simple, streamlined game that does something complex correctly, right? Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea. Okay, so Dice United. Dice United works the same way as Stone Cold. The timing mechanism is different, and it's way more involved, and it's way more dynamic, I think, than hockey is. But that was, that's part of what makes, soccer and added time and all that stuff work. That's part of what makes that part of the sport fascinating. But in terms of how it works, it's the same thing, right? You roll your timing roll. You have a pitch battle die instead of a puck battle die. And if you combine the aggression of the two teams, and the higher the aggression, the lower the threshold to trigger those pitch battle events. So, in a nutshell, when you're playing Dice United, you've got two types of sequences that are going to occur. You're going to have attack sequences, and you're going to have pitch battles. Exactly the same as Stone Cold. You're either going to have an attack sequence, or it's going to be a puck battle. And the puck battles and the pitch battles work the same way. In the soccer game, it's divided into first half, second half, and crunch time. Because crunch time in soccer is its own thing.
Right.
It's analogous to empty net in hockey. I could revisit that part of the topic later, but and from there it pretty much works the same way. You get an attack sequence, you go to column A. Do you score? No. Then look at column B. Look at column C. Otherwise, if the defense is in effect, you go straight to column D and you take it from there. So that laid the groundwork. All of that was conceptually in place when I took off, embarked on this journey with hockey 14 months ago.
Oh, nice. I know that Dave's going to have some kind of rapid fire questions that we got from other people. I want to talk a little bit about the PC version.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, let's talk about the PC version of the game.
That I'm going to play the most of, and I guess the first one is, the print game is supposed to be out late September. September 23rd is what you're shooting for, but there's some give out.
Actually, so let me clarify that. So the pre-orders should all ship by the 23rd.
Okay.
Then it will go public release a few days later. So I'm looking at the 26th, throwing the doors open, saying, "Okay, now we're ready."
All right, and it ships with 8 fictional teams. Just to be clear about that.
Yes,
I
know some people.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know some people are not going to be happy about that, but this is a lesson learned from Dice United. when I released Dice United, I didn't have I was struggling to come up with what I was going to do for sample teams. So I ended up taking part of a season and saying, okay, these are going to be the 4 sample teams that come with the game. And that helps hold down costs, right? Because you're not asking for somebody to pay for an entire season set,
right,
with their core game. So after having done that now, we've had, it's kind of been an ongoing dilemma in that the 4 teams that come with the game, well, those may or may not appeal to people. That particular league, the EPL, may not appeal to people. Their team may not be one of the 4, and so forth, right? And then there's confusion because some people might get the game and go, oh, I thought I was getting the whole 2012 season. This is just the 4 top teams. And so then they have to go back and do a second order to go get the rest of the season set for that particular year. And so that was just messy. And I thought, okay, how can I keep down costs, not ask, not have to pump up the cost because people are having to pay for an entire season set to come with their hockey game, and then have these dilemmas of whether it's a year that they're interested in, whether there's a team in it that they're interested in, so forth.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? I'll just. I'd already come up with this fictional system in the appendix of the Stone Cold Hockey rules. So I thought, why don't I just use that appendix, create this league, and then I can include that. These are the sample teams. They're inexpensive. I was able to just create these on the fly, right? And so I don't have to base them on statistics. And I can just, the teams. The teams are very realistic. You could easily take all the numbers on those cards and say, yeah, that could represent a real hockey team. There's nothing that breaks the game or the sport through these fictional teams. But by just having an 8-team league, and these 8 teams they all have their own different characteristics, right? Some are aggressive, some are more offensive, some are more defensive minded, so forth. I think that gives people a good showcase, a good way to learn the game, mm-hmm. and then decide if they want to start investing in season sets or not.
Okay. And so the creation process of creating fictional teams is in the game itself. When you buy the game, it's in the back, you said, right? So you could there's an appendix in the back that will do that for you and will allow you to age those teams in perpetuity. So if you want to keep those teams going and make off-season rolls, it's just like Grid Zone. This is something that I pulled from Grid Zone. If you want to keep a career league going for as long as you want to do it, decades even, you can do that with this appendix.
So let's talk a little bit about the PC game. The night that it came out that you and Richard Hanna were working on something, I think Dave got 7,000 text messages.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that Richard Hanna is finally doing a hockey game. Because we've talked about that before, with the PC replay basketball and baseball. Yeah. He needs a hockey game, and so you're getting a hockey game.
I think that was the first night I had the concussion run, and I looked at my phone. I had all these notifications. I go, oh, all these people are checking on me.
And then he fell and hit it. No, there's a hockey game coming out with Richard Hanna's paw prints all over it.
Yeah, it's like, Dave, there's a game.
Sorry about the hematoma. I hope you live long enough to play it. Yeah.
Sorry, Ron. I feel like I should be sorry on a couple different facets.
Don't be sorry at all. Don't be sorry at all. So you two worked on Legends of Boxing together, which is how I'm familiar with your work. How did that come together? And are there going to be any differences between the PC version and the Cards and Dice version?
Okay, so first question is, let's see, we had recovered, Richard and I, from the release of the boxing game somewhere around February, March. I was already playtesting the tabletop game.
Okay.
And I think I must have mentioned that, or he may have seen it in
the hockey game we're talking about, not the
hockey game.
Yeah.
The hockey game. We were playtesting that, and he emailed me and he said that he was messing around. He's always doing something, right? Programming various things. He was messing around with the project and he was kind of frustrated with it. And he was looking for something a little easier to tackle. And, he knows my approach on game design, and my games are sort of hybrid, quick play, highlight oriented, that kind of stuff. And so I think this was just the kind of project he was looking for. And he admitted, he doesn't know hockey all that well. And
Richard, by the way, for those not familiar, is from the UK. So it's not like Hockey Night in Canada is a staple. It's like Match of the Day being a staple over here.
He went to the University of Kentucky?
Yes.
Yes.
Adolph Rupp is his hero.
Richard Hanna is a diehard Wildcat. No, not that UK.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so at any rate, he was looking around. He's like, can I take a look at your hockey game? I might want to do it. I'm like, wow, really? Okay, why not? So I sent him what I had of the instructions at the time, and he came back a couple days later and said, yeah, this looks totally doable. Let's get into it. And so that's where it started, and we've been corresponding about almost daily ever since.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So,
anything you can tell us about that? I mean, that you're willing to share at this point about the PC game?
Let me see. Well, first of all, let me get to your second question. So you had asked are there differences between...
Other differences, yeah.
The PC game and the table game, and one that comes to mind is that the computer game isn't constrained like I am doing a print product, right? Mm-hmm. Constrained for space. So, for example, Richard could potentially have more players on a card than I could fit. Particularly goalies. Like the goalie section on my team cards is only goes 3 deep, and as you know, it's possible, through injury and whatever.
Didn't Kansas City have 5 or 6 one year, Dave?
Yeah, the Seals did too. They had 5.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've already encountered teams in the computer game that have 6 or 7 potential goalies, and I can't do that with the tabletop game. So I have to make a compromise somehow, and one way I might do that would be to list the A and the B goalie, and then in the third slot I might list 2 or 3 names and do an average rating for these guys that played 1 or 2 starts each, right? That's one way to compromise that. For the most part, you're still 80% of the time or 90% of the time, you're still going to have your A and B goalies, and then there's this kind of committee,
right?
That represents the third goalie rating. But in the computer game, you might actually, have one of those goalies as a starter. So that's a difference.
Okay. But
I'm trying to think of another difference that might come up, and I can't really.
The gameplay is going to be the same. Have you decided when you purchase the game? Does it come with the 8 fictional teams, or will it come with a season of your choice? Or have you thought that far ahead yet?
We're still hashing that out.
Okay.
I would kind of like to have the 8 fictional teams in there, just because that keeps the 2 products in sync.
Right.
So, people who get, there's going to be a small percentage of people who get the core game, and maybe all they're interested in is fictional.
There are people who will do it, yeah.
And I know a few guys that way. I ran into a few. I was at the Play.con in Denver last month, and I ran into a few there that were asking, "Hey, we're going to be able to do fictional with your new hockey game." So, that's its own play style. So right now we haven't really figured out where fictional is going to land in the PC game. Is it going to be strictly historical, or are we going to have the ability to create?
Because as that was talked about with Legends of Boxing, you can do both.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Legends of Boxing is a whole different animal in that when you buy the PC game, you also get the career campaign guide, which is a totally separate supplement, and it's huge. The career campaign guide, if you buy it separately, that's like a 30-page landscape printed binder, spiral bound thing of charts to get all that fictional stuff, and that's already integrated into the PC game. So that's a whole different animal.
Right. I didn't mean to throw you off, but that's already into one of your.
Okay. Is the PC game going to keep stats and standings?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. How about the ability?
It'll have the schedules in there. Yeah, it'll have the schedules in there, and you can do autoplay at various levels. I know already he's got it set up to where you could pull up a day of the schedule and go, I don't want to play this day. I'm going to just hit autoplay, and it just plays that day.
Oh, so it does sim games. Fantastic. It's simulate games.
You can pull back and look at a week and go, I want to play this game and this game, so I'm going to go ahead and play those, bang, bang, and you play those out manually. And then you step back and go, the rest of these, let's autoplay this whole week.
Nice.
Bang, and it takes care of those. And you can do that for a month, and you can do that for the whole season. If you just want to say, play this season for me, bang, and rip through it.
Okay. Nice.
It'll spit out the stats to you, which has been a huge boon to me because I go through my ratings process, and the ratings process is pretty good, but it's not until you play hundreds and hundreds and maybe, who knows, 11, 12, 1,300 games of a full season that you step back and go, oh, well, this rating could use a little tweaking. Yeah. Their defense is a little too tough, or their
playtesting support.
Their attack rating is not quite high enough, and so I do that. So for the game when we release it, and I'm talking about the tabletop game, and presumably the PC version as well. Whenever we release it, we're going to have 7 seasons available. Well, those 7 seasons have all been vetted already.
Nice.
In the computer simulation. So it's been through phases. And I'll tell you what the phases are. So you go out, you grab the stats, you plug all that in, and you get your base ratings. And the base ratings are pretty good. They're 90, 95% accurate, I would say. And then I consult with my hockey experts and in my playtest group, and I'll ask them. I'll say, hey, look, I think, because in Stone Cold Hockey, you got 2 types of players that stand out, right? You got the enforcers and the agitators that have a special role beyond just scoring goals or racking up penalty minutes or whatever, right? Those 2 guys, those 2 types of players are singled out as having an effect on the game. So we have to go through, once we've got our base ratings, the second phase is to identify, for this particular season, who are the enforcers and agitators going to be. And there's specific criteria for that, and there has to be a cutoff point. For example, a lot of people may look at Stone Cold Hockey after it's released, and they'll go, well, why isn't Steve Ott an agitator in whatever year, 2008 or something, right? And the reason might be because he may have just fallen underneath the cutoff limit for that role. And what I mean by that is it's capped. So like enforcers and agitators, generally speaking, you're not going to have more players in those roles than you have teams in the league. First of all, I don't want every single team in the league to have a player in that role, right? There's going to be some teams that don't get the benefit of that. Okay, so just having a reputation as being a pest kind of player, a scrappy kind of guy, isn't good enough. You have to also be in the elite in terms of penalty minutes you've racked up, and that applies to whether you're an enforcer or an agitator. Okay, so for the agitators, the limit is even greater. I should say the cap is even tighter. So generally when I rate a season, if the season has, let's say, 21 teams, then I will cap the number of agitators in the league that actually get that tag at somewhere around half the number of teams. So 10, 11, 12 teams are going to have players with the agitator tag.
Is it possible for someone like Chris Nyland to have both?
Boy, we talked about that. Like a Gordie Howe,
right?
Was a guy that we talked about extensively.
His special hat trick.
And I think for simplicity, and especially when you look at the team cards, I didn't see a good way to do that. So we have decided to either go one way or the other. And who knows? For some players, that might actually change. You might have for example, you might have a player who in his first 6 or 7 years in the league ends up being an agitator. And then in year 8 or 9 or 10, he's a big boy now. He's grown into his man hockey body, and now he's an enforcer, right? And he takes on that team leader role and starts enforcing more. And so you might have players who end up with both tags over time, but not simultaneously.
Not at the same time.
Okay.
In the same season, yes.
Okay.
So did I get off track there? So that was So the next phase. So we do the agitator enforcer piece of the season creation phases, and then we move on to the third phase, which then is getting it into the computer game and testing it. And I'll run season after season after season, and I'll make tweaks to it, and then I'll settle on what I think are the best ratings I could possibly get that will get, generally over time, we'll get results as close to accurate as possible, which by that I'm generally looking for plus or minus 3% in most categories.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, because Stone Cold Hockey has this other game within a game going on that, in terms of stamina and hits and agitators and enforcers. This is also, most people would call this intangibles kind of stuff. Because you've got all that going on, you can get quite a bit of variance, when you go and play a league. So I think people, when they get the computer game, they might play a season and go, well, man, boy, sure, doggone Toronto, they really weren't that good that year, but here they ended up with 18 points higher than they were in reality in the standings. Well, you know what? Play it again. Run it 2 or 3 more times, and you might see that was an anomaly.
Right.
And you get Toronto to outperform, you're going to get on Hockey Night in Canada.
So I'm just saying, the point standings can fluctuate quite a bit, and a lot of that has to do with these intangibles that have been brought into the game.
Right.
Okay. So, will you be able to roll your own dice and put the inputs in the hockey game?
You can already do that.
Oh, so that's in the game already. Okay, good.
Yeah, we've already. Yeah, that's been in play testing already for a while.
Okay. Let's just say I have the 74-75 season and the 90-91 season. Can I play teams from different seasons against each other?
Well, in the computer game, I'm not sure how that'll work yet. That's a good question I need to ask.
Okay.
But you could on the tabletop, obviously.
Yes, on the tabletop.
On the tabletop, you can. And in fact, I want to expand on that a bit. I like this topic.
Sure.
So, we're all a bunch of game simulation geeks here, right? So, you know what normalization is.
Yep. Cross-error normalization.
And stuff like that. Well, in Stone Cold Hockey, I've kind of done partial normalization. And what I mean by that is my team ratings, the control. Well, control is kind of its own thing. It doesn't matter what era that is. Control is based on winning percentage, right?
Right. Okay.
So there's really nothing nuanced about it, that would change over an era. So we can throw that one out. But like attack and defense ratings, and I guess to an extent aggression, yeah, aggression, and goalie ratings. All of those things can vary greatly.
Joked about the Devils of the, Marty Brodeurs Devils, and it's a different style hockey than Grant Fuhr's Oilers.
Right, exactly. Yeah, those things can vary greatly over from one era, one decade to the next. And so, what I wanted, I wanted a game in which you could take, a team from, the high flying early '80s, right, and put it up against the team from the, the low scoring, trap oriented, '90s. And the strengths of both teams would still play, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't adjusted in any way, so that the high-scoring team is still going to be prone to be high-scoring, and the really defensive team is still going to be defensive, and they're not adjusted toward each other at all, right? All of that stuff is rated on a broader scale that encompasses basically from the '60s all the way to present. So I took the whole range of what's possible, and I said, okay, this is it, and these are the upper and lower ends, and this is the median, and we're going to adjust all of our attack, defense, and aggression ratings off of those numbers in league history. Now goalies are different. Goalies I had to normalize, in a sense. I don't know if normalization is the right word. I had to rate goalies really based on in comparison to each other, right? So that helps take into account the how I have a hard time explaining this, but how like equipment, has changed and pads have gotten bigger and helmets came into play, and and how goalies themselves got bigger and all those sorts of ways that stuff has evolved over time. So this helps mitigate that, so that you can't compare. You just can't compare the save percentages of guys in the '60s with the save percentages of guys today.
Right?
No.
That's not fair, right? Meanwhile, in the rest of the game, it is fair. I am comparing, the '80s teams scoring 5 and 6 goals a game to other teams in the '90s scoring 2.5 goals a game, right? That comparison is made, and that's why I feel pretty good about being able to take these teams from across era, lay them on the table next to each other, and getting a fun result that feels right, and not like a couple homogenized versions of those teams instead.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah. I like that. All right, I got one more question, and then we're going to jump into the listener questions, and then we'll wrap up the show here. Will you be able to enter in your own stats in this game? And I ask that because in the baseball game, PC Replay, and in the basketball game, you could actually play a different game and then enter stats in. Will that be an option in this PC game?
Enter in stats?
Meaning I decide to play a full hour and a half of APA, but I'm playing the PC Stone Cold Hockey, but I said, no, this is a big game. I want to play this game out hour and a half with APA or
so
Strat. So
essentially, enter the goals.
So I would go in and enter the goals and assists, manually. And I know with PC Replay basketball, I think you can do that. You can go in and just say, hey, what happened in your game? You can put in all the points and the whatever, and just hit enter, and it absorbs into the game. And I think with the baseball too, because I think in the baseball you could actually, you could click what happened at the at bat. You know what I mean? So in theory, you could be playing any game and then enter it in there if you wanted to. So it'd be kind of fun to play like a Strat baseball and enter it, and then APA baseball, and then History Maker baseball, but be using PC Replay baseball to tally all your games in that. So I didn't know if that was going to be an option in here too. A couple people had asked me that about if I want to enter my own stats into here.
Well, I think the way you would do it, if you're using a different game and entering stats in, I don't see how that would work currently. What you could do, if you wanted to just play a game on the tabletop, if you wrote down your dice results, recorded those, then you could come back to the PC game later and enter in what happened.
Oh, you would just manually the manual entry and add those rules in, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really intended for people who, are sitting, at the airport with their laptop or whatever, and, maybe using a dice app, and they're playing the game, essentially. They're rolling it themselves and entering in the dice results and then having the computer game, execute it based on the dice results you enter. So you can do that, but yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to take the results of a different game and enter that in. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, yeah, because like I said, I was just wondering because it'd be like, okay, Bobby Orr got 2 goals and Phil Esposito got 1 goal and 1 assist, and then Bobby Clark got 1 goal and it was 3-1 Boston, and then done and that way there. So I just didn't know if that because there's some other games that do that. What was that new baseball game that did that, Ron?
Digital Diamond, which has a board game companion.
Yeah, it's so that way there you could play any baseball game but still be in Digital Diamond,
right.
And then
you don't have to play
put
that
the stats.
board game, right?
So
nice. Yeah, well, we'll I'll bring it up and see where it goes.
All right, so Gary, we got some questions from the listeners here, and we thought we'd ask them.
Nice.
Kelly asked, "What will this game do or bring that some of the other hockey games don't bring right now?"
Well, I think we touched on it with stamina, the stamina mechanics, how those work, the fact that certain players being tagged as enforcers and agitators have a specific impact on the game, and the fact that every fight, even a dud of a fight, still has some sort of effect mechanically on the game as well. I guess I'm kind of dwelling on old school because you're not going to see that many fights in current day, modern hockey. But I bet you Stone Cold will probably produce a few more fights than you get in reality. So you'll still get some of those effects.
We had an issue, Ron, in one of our games where I think it was the Flyers and the Sabres, where the fighter for the Flyers was an enforcer. I want to say it was Andre Dupont. And whoever he fought on the other team was not an enforcer. And there's a column for one enforcer. And we re-rolled on that. It not only did it beat down the losing team, it also gained 1 control for the enforcer team. So having that enforcer beat up somebody really bad, it had 2 effects in the game.
Fires up the team, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool in there. So it does do that. Okay, Mark asked, he'd like to know what are some of the mechanical play differences between Stone Cold Hockey and Dice United, another great game from Gary Brown that many people, including himself, own. So what are some of the mechanical differences between the football, the soccer and the hockey game?
Oh, the timing is the big one, really. Just the pacing of a hockey game is not comparable to the pacing of a soccer game, and I think the timing mechanics reflect that. At their core, and we talked about this earlier, at their core, the 2 games are very similar. You can see how they're based on the same template. The procedures are much the same. So if you have the soccer game and you're comfortable with that, getting into this game is going to be easy for you. On the other hand, I would say the biggest differences between the 2 games are, much like the differences between the sports themselves. The number of, the amount of scoring, obviously, the amount of time that you spend dealing with penalty situations and the ramifications thereof in hockey is much, much greater than what you'll have in soccer.
Cool. His from some guy named Steve Tower. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this guy. Never heard of him.
Is that new?
Goes by the name of Skip from Maine, right?
Must be a new listener, yeah.
Yeah.
He asked, what was the most satisfying historical matchup to replay while you were finalizing the game?
Wow. Let's see. I mean, I spent a lot of time playing the 75 teams and playing playoff matchups. I don't know if I actually replayed a particular series. I know I played Buffalo versus Montreal probably twice, 7-game series. Yeah, and that's kind of the one that sticks out. I think I had Montreal win it in 6, but how that happened...
I like the game more already.
How that happened was...
We don't care.
The road to getting there was really, really cool. And I just remember that being a lot of fun. So, yeah, I would say that one off the top of my head.
Okay. And we have David in the UK, and he asks, any plans to issue sets from outside North America? As a UK-based hockey fan, he'd love to see some elite league. So anything beyond the NHL, basically.
Well, I would say yes. I love to do stuff like that. If you look at what I've done with Dice United, I've got some different kind of leagues in there. I've got a Scottish Premier League. I'd like to do an Irish league. I've got, I got a couple, Bundesliga sets, or one, I guess. I got a couple of La Liga sets. So, yeah, anything's possible. And I really do like to do the odd set now and then. And I would like to do the same with hockey. If nothing else, I'd like to do it just to help me learn more beyond just this tunnel vision I have of the NHL. You know, I've had people ask for, what is it, WHA? Does that sound right?
Yeah, WHA is the 70s league, yeah.
That would be a fun one, yeah.
The Western Hockey League, right?
World Hockey
Association.
Oh, okay. So there was a Western Hockey League, too, wasn't there?
That's one of the junior leagues, yeah. It's the Western Hockey Association.
Yeah. So I've been asking about these.
Okay.
You know, Pacific Coast, I think, was one that came up. So I've had some recommendations coming already for those. Yeah. And really, you know, that sort of stuff is going to come down to the availability of stats.
Yep.
If I can't get enough numbers to support it, and there's too much gray area to just sort of fill in, that's going to make it that's a pretty big barrier to getting there.
Yeah. George asks, on the PC version of the game, do you think you'd be able to set up a draft league?
A draft league is a drafting players?
Yeah. So in other words, you get the pool of players, and then you draft.
No, this is a team-based game.
Okay.
You know, it's a team-based, highlight-oriented game. So, if you're going to get down to the level, you know, players are individually carded. So if we can't individually card the players for the table game, then doing, a player draft with the computer game isn't going to be possible either.
Okay. Ed asks, will you have the ability to rate your own teams and players? He said that's a big selling point for him because he loves older seasons in minor leagues and things like that. He goes, he asked, would you be offering like a ratings formula in the future so he could rate his own minor league teams and leagues?
Well, I might point back to the discussion we had earlier about the ratings process and what I go through to get there. That would be difficult. I can't rule it out. For example, I do plan to produce a translations guide, I like to call it, for the soccer game, for Dice United, and so that people can go out and rate their own leagues and create their own stuff for soccer. So if I can do it for soccer, theoretically I can do it for hockey, but hockey is much more complex, and the soccer game has been out for a few years. I feel pretty good about releasing such a guide for that now. And when I do ratings for Dice United, I mean those ratings are pretty much they're good to go. There's very little, if anything, very rarely do I ever feel a need to make a tweak. I won't say it's never happened, but it's like 1 in 100 team cards might need a little tweak.
Okay.
For soccer, but for hockey, that's a much higher percentage, and some of it has to do with the complexities of the sport, and some of it has to do with, like for example, the way I have goalies rated versus defenses. Okay. Those two things are basically the component two components of the same thing. But in Stone Cold Hockey, I've tried to put a little bit more emphasis on the goalie, since it's the only real player on the team who is individually rated. Mm-hmm. Okay. And since a lot of the game also dwells on going to the chance chart, and that's where that goalie comes into play. So the goalies get a little bit more weight versus the defense in the game. And that, those sorts of nuances, the aggression aspect, the stamina aspect, the enforcers and agitators, all of those things sort of conspire against
right.
the idea of just saying, here's the guide, go rate your own, right?
Yeah.
I don't have all of those complications in soccer. Soccer is much easier. And so I think that guide is more doable, as where, right now, we talked about it, right? I do a hockey set, and I plug it in the computer, and I test it, and I tweak it.
Right.
And if you're creating your own set on the tabletop, you're not going to want to do that.
Right. Okay. So the answer is maybe down the line. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. John asks, PC games naturally quicker than board games. Since this board game appears to take about 20 minutes or so to play, do you think the PC game will play quicker than that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how fast do you want to hit the space bar and advance, through the game. I'm trying to think how long it might take me to manually play a game. I think you could probably step through a computer game right now in beta in, I don't know, 30 seconds, I think.
Oh, wow.
just going bang, 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 getting result.
Oh, I see.
And,
okay.
And not necessarily absorbing everything. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Each touch of the dice, each touch of the enter key, for example, could be a roll of the dice. So you could go bang, 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 and get through it in under a minute.
Okay.
You can also, of course, there's also autoplay in the computer game. So you can hit that and play hundreds of games in seconds,
right,
if you want to.
Okay, cool. All right, one last question from Brian. Actually, he's got two questions. One is, will Dice United or Grid Zone get the PC treatment similar to Legends of Boxing and Stone Cold Hockey?
I think so. It has been talked about.
Okay.
I won't go much further than that, but yeah, I mean, I think Richard and I have a real good rapport. Trying to develop all these things by email across the pond is challenging.
Right.
But I think he and I do pretty well in that regard. And so, the boxing game has done really well in its Windows version. And I have little doubt that this will also be equally great in its own regard. Yeah, as long as we don't hit some major speed bump or some other life circumstance alters things, then
it's a possibility. Yeah, nice.
It's fairly safe to say that I think we'll get there eventually. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question is, any plans for a one dice roll resolution for Dice United games?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I'm not interested in that. There's already, there's tons of quick play games out there. Probably some of them you can get free. If you just want something to generate a score, you can get that.
Right.
I don't see a need to do that for Dice United, and I don't see it being anything different than what these other score generator type quick plays would already do.
Okay. All right. So wrapping things up, he's got the new game coming out. It's called Stone Cold Hockey. Taking pre-orders now that should be shipped out on the 23rd of September. And then on the 26th of September, he's opening up all the orders to everything. Where can we get this game?
StoneMountain.press.
Okay, so go to StoneMountain.press. And I clicked on the shop button, and that brings me over to the games. And I click on Stone Cold Hockey. And
yeah, you go into the shop there. Also, I'll point out on the website, if you click the games tab, that will take you to a page where you can access other pages, other sections of the website that are specifically dedicated to those games, and that's where you'll find FAQs, fan supported material, like additional score sheets, other teams, spreadsheet. People have programmed with macros spreadsheets that'll generate teams, and like in Grid Zone or schedules. There's all kinds of stuff on those pages, and I think a lot of people miss that on the website.
Okay. And so let me see. So right now there are 7 seasons available. We have 64-65, 74-75, 83-84, 90-91. So already you have 2 of my favorite seasons on here. 05-06, 11-12, and 21-22. Those are all available right now as part of the pre-order. And I can only assume that more seasons are coming.
Oh, yes.
Okay, more seasons are coming. Now, we've had a lot of questions of, will there be a PDF-only version of this game and only version for seasons?
Let's see. Yes, pretty much everything I do, I offer a PDF version of it. What was the second question about the seasons?
So in other words, because there's some people in Canada and United Kingdom, outside the United States, shipping is a big problem for them. So will you have a PDF only version of the game and a PDF only version of the seasons, and will they be the same price or less than the printed price?
Oh, they're always less. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, for me, PDF is out there so that we can alleviate, the shipping problem. And the understanding is that once you get a PDF product, you're probably going to have to go through some pain to print it yourself, pay to have it printed, do some cutting or whatever. I understand that. Of course, a lot of my PDF stuff is really intended for on-screen use. So I think the ideally, it would be that you go so far as to print the charts, and then like let's use Stone Cold Hockey as an example. You get it in PDF. You print out there's 3 main pages of charts, right? So you print out those three main pages, and then the rest you keep electronically, and then you pull up your 2 teams, and the teams are going to come in PNG format, so they're just image files.
Okay.
That's the plan. And so you can pull those images up on screen, and that becomes your tabletop, right? Those things are there in front of you. You can reference them, and then you keep your score sheet however you like, either on a laptop or by hand.
Okay.
And play with and engage with the game that way.
Okay, so you will have a PDF only version of the master game and PDF only versions of all the seasons.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And PC game before Christmas? Don't want to put you on the spot for that.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. Yeah.
Okay.
We would like to. I can't guarantee this, but we would like to release the PC game at about the same time, like the same week.
No, I didn't want to put you on the spot to say, "Oh yeah, we'll have it." So,
yeah.
As the tabletop, I don't know that we're going to make it.
Okay.
There's you've heard me. We've touched on a few topics where it's like we're talking about this in the computer game, but it's not solved yet. So
yeah,
we'll see. Richard works fast. He's incredible at what he does.
Okay, so we'll have to stay tuned for that. All right, Gary Brown from Stone Mountain Press. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about your new game, Stone Cold Hockey, as well as some of the other games that you did. So thank you so much.
Gents, it's been a complete pleasure and a bucket list item I can check off now that I've been on the podcast with you.
And
seriously, I look forward to getting together with you guys again someday, and maybe
please do.
We're talking about doing these head-to-head tactics cards for Stone Cold Hockey. So maybe one of these days we can try to play with those online and do a head-to-head game.
Yeah, a good Saturday night YouTube extravaganza with those here, and we'll show off the game as well. So we'll look forward to doing that in the future. So anyway, so thank you so much for being on Digital to Dice.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, by the numbers. Episode 148 is in the books. A terrific interview.
Oh, wasn't it?
Oh, my gosh. I could have talked to him all day about that hockey game. I really could have. And we did talk all day, actually. We talked quite a bit before and after the show.
Yeah, we did.
But, yeah, so check that out. Coming out soon. Stone Cold Hockey.
Such an ingenious system.
The more you play it, the funner it gets. It really is.
It's just such an ingenious system. And again, simple just comes across as such a bad word. Even though it is. It's very simple, but efficient.
And
isn't
efficient,
anything
effective, yeah.
wasted in anything in that game.
It just does so many things that you get in a hockey game. And I was surprised. The more we played, the more results we got. It was like, wow, we got this and we got that. And just, it was so much fun. And they got a PC game coming out, too. I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking for, as a more casual fan. Again, I don't think this replaces the longer play games. And I don't think he didn't design it to replace any of the longer play games. But if you want to take a more top-down view of a season and just play them out a game of the week style, you're going to be able to do that.
Well, what's going to be fun about this PC game is, we all have our other PC hockey games, but they're all longer play games. They're 45 minutes, hour, whatever it is. And this one here is going to be a quicker play hockey game that'll auto play games and keep stats and the whole bit. And so that's what's going to be kind of fun is you could bang out game after game after game real quick in this and get through some seasons and really have some fun with the projects here. So I'm looking at this as a quicker play version.
Quicker play, and it's going to be released with 7 different seasons, including the most current one too. So if you're a Colorado Avalanche fan.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that last season's first round was great. I might have to get that. I don't usually play modern stuff, but I might have to get that. But anyway, ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com. That is our website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. digitaltodice@yahoo.com. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. All righty, Ron, until next time.
Bye-bye.
You're getting good at that. You really are.
Thank you. I've had 148 times to practice.
All right.